how can you get to a point that you're excited about in your life and that gives you the freedom to live the life that you want to lead? Keep moving. One of the things I'm really staggered by is the number of times I meet people who complain about what they do, but they don't do anything about it. And they don't dare to move within the organization. They don't dare to take a chance and leave the organization and go and work somewhere else. And my own experience has been that you are really only worth as much to one employer as you are to another. So, and I now understand this much more as a boss, that if somebody comes to me and says that a rival magazine wants to poach one of my staff, that's when I start feeling hysterical as a boss. And it's a very powerful weapon to use. You can only use it once or twice, but you should never be afraid to move and to try something else. It's not bad for your career. I've done things where I've taken jobs that required pay cuts. And both times I had to suck it up financially and slightly recalibrate my lifestyle. But both moves were towards a greater goal, and I'm really glad I did it. And sometimes you just have to think laterally about how you're going to get to the next place. And sometimes you get blocked in places. And it's very important to be realistic, but it's very important to be honest and look around the workplace that you're in and evaluate. Are there people above you who are more likely to get promoted? Are you working with people who are going to stop you being promoted? And if that's the case, then honestly move on out. And it may well be the case. That happens in offices. Offices are usually on a pyramid scheme, and sometimes you're going to bump up against someone who's very well qualified above you, who ain't going nowhere, and you have to move. And you sort of have to suck it up. And I'm very unsentimental about the workplace. If it's not working for you, find somewhere that will. Another thing, call people you admire and ask for their advice. And usually people are flattered to be asked for their advice, and usually they will give you 15 minutes. And I got my job at Marie Claire because I had turned up for the interview, and long story short, I had missed the message. There'd been a message saying, can you come in for the interview? I had actually been on vacation. I hadn't been checking my messages. I left them a message saying, yes, I'm coming in for the interview. And when I actually got to the office, it turned out that the person who was supposed to be interviewing me, who was the head of Hearst magazines, had cancelled the interview, which I hadn't picked up the message that they were cancelling the interview, and that she was on her way to France. And so I got to the office and they said, you've just missed her. Sorry, she's in a car on the way to the airport. And I said, well, can I sit with her in the car on the way to the airport? It seemed a really obvious, natural thing to me to ask. And they said, well, that's very, very odd indeed. Maybe you can. And she said, she can if Kathy Black, was at her apartment about to leave. The black car was purring outside on Park Avenue. And they called her up and she said, well, if she can get here in 3 minutes, she can ride with me to the airport. And I haired out of the building. I ran into the middle of 6th Avenue and put my arms up. I stopped a cab. I pulled the passenger out. I threw myself in and I said, get me to Park Avenue. And we got to Park Avenue as Kathy's car was drawing out. She was in the car, and we drove parallel up Park Avenue with a cab driver saying, this is very strange, this has never happened to me before. Who are you, crazy lady? You're stalking her. And I was kind of frantically like this, and then she pulled over, I got in the car, and by the time we got to the airport, I had the job. And the thing is, that the most important thing in any career is you can't plan any of it, and often it looks like there's a logical series of steps to anything that you're doing. But the key thing for all of you is to be open to the idea of opportunity. Always take the call, always go for the interview. You just don't know where things are going to lead. And don't be prescriptive about what you want to do unless you're a doctor or you're in a very, very limited sphere that you're only trained to do that. But never, ever don't be ready for opportunity. You just have to be ready because you never know when it's going to happen. And I remember actually there was a TV show in Britain I had always wanted to present, and I'd been a frequent guest on it, but I'd never had the opportunity to present it. And the time came when I got a call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the person who was supposed to be the centre of that evening's show had literally collapsed and died and couldn't turn up. And bad news for him, great career move for me. And so they literally called and said, can you get here in an hour and a half? This is your opportunity. And I just, I cancelled everything I was doing. I ran full tilt to the BBC. But, when I woke up that morning, I had no idea that's what I was going to do. I wasn't very well prepared for the interview. Of course, I hadn't read the book of the poor author I was interviewing, but you sort of, you fake it. You fake it. That may also be useful for orgasm headlines at some point.